that I've been considering this program. As Vincent said in his memo, we've been talking about.
I'm going to ask everyone, if they're not talking, to please mute your mic.
For 4 years. And really, COVID-19 just upped the ante.
Well,
It just increased the dangers that we already had.
can you mute, Hank? Do you have a problem to mute people or no?
I can mute people. I'm not quite sure whom to mute.
Yeah, if you're not speaking, please go ahead and mute your microphones. We don't get background noise, and we'll go from there. And when you speak, we can unmute yourself. Lynn, I just called roll call, but I'll go ahead and notice that you are on the meeting now. So thank you. I don't know if we have any of the council members want to add or delete anything from the agenda today. We're all good with the agenda? Okay.
I do have something.
Okay.
And maybe it's just an information piece, and that is that the Fuller Street, Fuller Street is on the agenda. So it's also on the city commission agenda. I wanted to mention that, but we're going to talk about that.
Okay. I'm just going to make some quick notes on some of the meetings coming up here. I do recommend everyone to go to our website. It's always posted what the meetings that coming up are. And we do have the city commission meeting coming up in 2 days, which is June 24th at 9 a.m. The PZAB is also on the same day. And is meeting on June 28th. That's next Monday. The HEP board, July 6th. The appeals board again on July 7th. And the URPB board on the 21st. Hold on a second. And I guess the next commission meeting will be back in July and 22nd, the following month. I don't know if you all have our agendas up with you. We do have quite a few items on the agenda. If there's any public comments right now not related to any agenda item, anyone from the public wants to make a comment or speak, put your hand up or unmute yourself, and I'd be happy to take any public comments this time. Okay, we're good. I don't know if, Hank, I'm going to ask you, I know that we're going to do, Commissioner Russell going to talk about the Fuller Street. He's going to come in later on. Did you have any confirmation of that?
Yes.
Okay. Is Commissioner Regalato's office being represented today here? Okay. And how about, is Bobby here from Maria Salazar's office?
Okay, I'm back.
There you go.
I had some trouble with my tablet, but I'm on my phone.
All right, very good. So if you just want to give us any updates from Congresswoman's office?
Oh, is that my turn?
Yes, sir.
Sure,
Bring it
absolutely.
first.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. The first thing is our event, our beautification event at Darlene Jackson's house. That was a total hit. Turned out to be exactly what the Congresswoman wanted, a neighborhood-oriented project, volunteer-based project. We had the community out there. We had interns out there, volunteers. We had the Home Depot. We had the landscaping company. And I'll tell you a quick story about the landscapers. Their name is Tenusa Landscaping. And all I asked them was to come in to see if they would if they would mow the lawn. And they came in, Marcelo, and they spent 3 days just cleaning out her yard. And another full day on Saturday planting plants, trees. It came out beautiful. They really went the extra mile to do the job. Like I've said before, we're going to do more of these going in the future, but what I want to do a little bit differently, because I got a little bit of pushback from some people that were asking me, how'd you get Darlene Jackson? How'd you pick Darlene Jackson? Why Darlene Jackson? So what I'd like to do, we want to do this again in 3 months. We want to get nominations from the different group. You can email me your nomination. Remember that we only do painting and landscaping. We don't do structure repairs. And it should be someone with a history, like Darlene Jackson is a 30-year employee, retired from the City of Miami Police Department. So someone with a little bit of Grove history, and we'll be glad to look at all the nominations from all the different groups this time. Instead, the first time, maybe it was a rookie mistake. I just went to the Hoda homeowners and asked them for what they thought, and they, we both agreed that we do Darlene Jackson, but now I know a little better, so I want to get all the groups involved. So if anybody has a nomination for us to rehab a home, you can send it to my email at roberto.alvarez@mail.house.gov, and we'll be happy to take a look at those nominations for our next beautification initiative. The one,
Bobby?
I'm sorry?
Do you have perhaps like a form or something like that folks can fill out that we can then post on our website, and you can post on yours, and we can get the word out that way?
I don't, but that's a great idea, Larissa. Thank you so much. I'm definitely gonna make one up, and I'll send it out. I'll send it out to the different groups. I'll have that done in the next couple of days.
Great. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks for the suggestion. Great idea. Like I said, the event turned out to be a beautiful event, and we want to keep on doing stuff like this, beautification initiatives in the Village West, and so we'll get that done. My next announcement is, again, the Prosperity Center that I always talk about, which is the center created by the Congresswoman to help folks find jobs, to help you navigate through the procurement process, and to help you navigate through the process of learning a trade. I'm happy to announce that we are now full-time at the Coconut Grove office, which is in the Frankie Rose Center, and we're there all day Wednesdays. So any referrals that you may have, anybody is looking for a job, that wants to learn a trade, that wants to get a federal grant for their business, we're there to help. That's about all I have now. I'm open for questions.
Bobby, about that resource center for job training,
Yeah.
you place them in current job training facilities throughout the city, or is it actually going on in the Grove, the job training?
No, we place them in different programs that there are. Marcelo, and I'm not an expert at it because I'm not the one that runs it, but I can get more information. The person that runs it, her name is Maggie Requilme. She's the director. Okay. I do casework and community outreach, so I'm not totally 100% familiar with how the Prosperity Center works, but I do know that there's going to be a representative in the Grove all day Wednesdays, and so I'm going to get some more information on that, Marcelo, and I'll have it for you in the next meeting.
Okay, that's great. But I'll go check it out next Wednesday and see how it's all about too, so get more information on it.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm not sure if anybody from Commissioner Regalato's office on the Zoom yet. So we'll come back to her later. You all may know that this is the midterm elections of this year is the 4-year mark for the Village Council. As you all may know, we're elected officials here, and this November 2nd will be the next election. And if we want to put it out there that for candidates to become a candidate, the deadline is September 18th. So between September 3rd and September 18th, anyone who wants to run for the Village Council, there are 9 positions. Please go to our website, email us. I believe, I don't know if Hank, did you put that link information on the website yet about the election process?
Not yet, but.
Okay, so by next week, you'll have some links on our website. But spread the word. There are quite a few of our current members that are terming out and that are not running, so there will be spots available. And I think we are also, why don't we next week go ahead and post on our website how many of the current ones are running again and how many that are not. But regardless, everyone's got to run together to get another 4-year term. I strongly urge anyone who wants to be more involved with Coconut Grove to please consider it. I think we've done a good job this last 4 years of getting things together. We're more organized, the website's working. So it's a good opportunity to get the ball rolling and make some progress. Any other council member have any comments about the election that they want to say?
I would just like to say that I am not going to run for another term, and I'm not sure whether my very brief appointment was counted as a term. I don't think it did, but I've just been, it's been a great experience being part of this group, and I'm really proud of what we've done and been very happy to be part of it, but I'm just overloaded. So I have to, there's something I have to stop doing, several things. So I'm not going to run again. But I want to thank you all for all the support that you've given me, that all the cooperation when we've worked together and collaborated on things. It's been great.
Well, it's not over yet, Hank. You have a few more months of work still, so don't slack off.
Oh, nuts.
All right. Anyone else, any other council member have any comments on this item? Again, all the details will be posted on there. We got an email from the city clerk about the procedures and how to do this, and we'll get it out there so everyone can see how it goes. We'll go ahead and head into the discussion items. I know the first item here was the leaf blower ordinance. I think was that who was that brought that up? Was that Rachel or Larissa?
Hi there, it's me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I did a little background research. I got some very good information from the Coral Gables sort of approach to what they're trying to do. And what they're doing is there's an online petition. I was a little surprised because their petition had only gotten about 100 signatures in Coral Gables, 118, supporting the proposal to ban the gas leaf blowers. I, in my very unscientific way, also put a poll on Nextdoor. It had a reach of 13 different neighborhoods, and 68% supported leaf blowing ban, and 32 did not. So it wasn't an overwhelming support, but it was clearly support in banning them. And that was 113 people who participated in that. So before I jumped into this, I just wanted to make sure that there was sort of the appetite for going down this road. And so the couple of things that I just wanted to point out and maybe get some feedback from the council, or if there's public input, I'm happy to hear it as well. I'll skip out, sort of the obvious ones, right? Air pollution with the being gas powered. There's a lot of environmental details relative to blowing away topsoil, hot air on plants from the blowers at 200 miles an hour, blowing spores and weed seeds around areas that, we're trying to combat. It also impacts certain beneficial insects, bees and earthworms, things like that, disturbing nests and habitats. But what I wanted to focus on, which is I think where we actually might have a leg to stand on, is really about the noise level. So a typical leaf blower is about 90 to 100 decibels. And the EPA recommends noise levels of no higher than 80 within 50 feet. So clearly when your neighbor is blowing their leaf blowers or having their landscape crew do so, it's certainly exceeding the 80 and it's within the 50 feet. The World Health Organization recommends no higher than 55 decibels. So again, a pretty big spread there. And the interesting one, which was pointed out repeatedly in this Coral Gables one, is OSHA, which requires anybody operating equipment over 85 decibels, again, a leaf blower being 90 to 100, anything over 85 requires hearing protection. And I don't think, in my experience, I've seen anybody wearing hearing protection. So just right off the bat, we're sort of, all of those companies, landscape companies, are exposed from an OSHA violation if someone were to sort of take it up. But so what I did secondly was look into the Miami noise ordinances, and they have in the single family and multifamily section for noise ordinance, it's relative to mechanical and fire equipment. So it's not in a direct correlation. I think it's more in reference to pieces of equipment that are on a roof or on a ground, right? You know, servicing the building, air conditioning and stuff like exhaust fans and things like that. But it is sort of important because, I mean, in my own experience, I've had leaf blowers next door to my house for, 45 minutes. And it does sort of become, after 20 minutes or so, mind numbing. And so within the single family, multifamily for equipment, they have a maximum of 60 and 65 dBA or decibels. And those are particularly during daytime hours from 7 to 10 p.m. So again, for 90 to 100, we're certainly way exceeding what would be allowed for any mechanical equipment anywhere within the city of Miami in residential neighborhoods. So that's sort of the groundwork in terms of the technical things, because I don't want to base it solely on, I don't like leaf blowers, but I needed to have some sort of scientific point of reference to explain why we should consider it. And then I sort of looked at it from an industry perspective, right? So the cost to convert a fleet of leaf blowers from gas to battery, and then this potential upsell of encouraging landscape companies to use raking, old school raking, and the potential for an upcharge for that, a selling point. And then the question was, all right, what are the actual action items? And the thing that I saw in several of the ordinances was one recommendation in California was to phase out leaf blowers, not to ask it all to happen overnight, but sort of develop a plan that allows the companies to develop it slowly and sort of come to all battery powered over the course of X number of years. The other option could be seasonal banning, right? No leaf blowing during summers, maybe they're not on holidays, not allowed on weekends. And then the third, which is a little more broad, which is to limit to specific hours. So before I went down the road on this whole thing, I just wanted to understand if there's any input from the council on recommendations on what kind of action item we would want to ask the city to do. Is it incorporating it into the noise ordinance? Is it something within NCD 2 and 3 that we want to sort of carve out as sort of an extra layer? Or is it just bringing awareness from an OSHA perspective, which to me seems, certainly something the city can enforce a little bit clearly, because you can see the person with a leaf blower without headphones or without ear protection. So before I started drafting a whole bunch of different ways to tackle this, I just thought I'd put that out there and see if there's any input or direction on where you think the best, most effective way to go. And I'll just open it up to any comments.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Really, as always, do great research, because there's never a right yes or no answer. And it always comes down to money, because it's, for the people to go in there and be able to charge a very low rate to do your lawn, they got to get in, they got to get out fast, they got to do a lot during the day, and that's the quickest way to do it. So I definitely, believe that this is a trend that we have to push for, and I think electric leaf blowers are a good solution to it. But I think also it's got to be aware that the homeowners are willing to pay a little bit more money to help, the labor costs of either going to raking. A very interesting thing that was done by the city of South Miami, I referred to it back when they wanted to do the encourage solar, is they put a consortium together and they put some 3 or 4 companies to come together and say, look, if you want to furnish solar to the city of South Miami, offer discounts, offer incentives by volume. And I think the same thing could be done here, especially in the NCD. If you start gathering, people that want to register as let's say official landscapers for the Coconut Grove area that can do the area and are going to be environmentally conscious, that maybe they pay an extra $5 or $10 per your cut, but that would be a win-win for everyone, where you can have people that are registered and doing the way the business we want, and we pay them a little bit extra money. And I think we're not talking about a huge nut, but it definitely would help. And I think always, in these tight streets we have, I've seen 4 or 5 trucks, come in and each one does one home. It'd be great to have this move forward where, you're letting them compete for the business, but, let them have consolidation, and that can give you the discount, right? You get one guy to do 3 houses right next to each other, you can save them time, money, and this noise factor will go down. So I think we should definitely pursue it, but have these alternative, it can't be a no and ban it. It's got to be phased. And I think if we work the price in with people willing to pay a little bit more and having companies register to do the business the way it should be done in the village, I think it'll be a win-win.
Do you think it's maybe the next step? I like the idea of sort of group packaging, because I think it saves a couple of things. One, it gets people, it's not a benefit if only 25% of the people in a particular physical area, right, part of the neighborhood commits to it, because you still got 75% of the leaf blowers going on. So I wonder if a homeowners association has any sort of muscle that we could sort of use, as opposed to going through a city process. Reaching out to the heads of those homeowners associations, maybe they waive their homeowners association fee if you commit to something like a non-gas powered leaf blower. And I think most, I don't know how much of the Coconut Grove is covered by homeowners associations.
Yeah,
so I feel
that's
like
the problem.
It would be a dent. Okay.
Yeah, that's the problem. I think we don't have many, and the ones we do have are maybe voluntary, unless they're in a gated community.
Yeah.
The gated communities could do it, but everyone else I think is open. They've band together, but I don't think there's any kind of control that they would have to fine somebody or not charge somebody. That's kind of a loose association thing. But I think we got to start someplace. It's not going to happen overnight. But I think if we go that route and we could probably collect some, go out and have people submit their landscape company to us and start saying if they're willing to do, be part of this plan and be like, let's say NCD approved or something. It'd be great if we have, half of the, at least half of, come to a place in the Grove where you don't have leaf blowers happening all the time, which is a huge win.
So if it was an NCD 2 and 3 sort of they're registered and approved, pre-approved, and then a homeowner can kind of look at that list, who do you think would facilitate that? I mean, is that something the village council would do? I don't think the city would want to get in the middle of it. Just, my first gut reaction.
Yeah, I think it's going to have to be a reach out of the village council, I guess, also,
Okay.
and I guess, talking to realtors, talking to everyone that gets involved in real estate transactions. I think that's probably, probably the way to go. And I guess they can, I'm not sure, but we have to talk to the city to see who's on the, I'm sure you can be a registered, I'm sure you could register your company. I mean, obviously I get licensed and insured, but you could also, if we can create an NCD approved list that says of what they're environmentally conscious. I think the city would probably encourage us to do something like that they use, that they don't use Roundup, that they don't use leaf blowers, things like that we could probably get on a list. That doesn't mean they're promoting anybody, but those are the ones that are environmentally conscious about what they're doing,
And that expands it beyond just the noise. It expands it to a broader reach, which has greater palatability, for lack of a better word. And one thing we're not talking about is, what about the homeowner who does their own lawn? It does exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think eventually this has to move towards of allowing a ban of the gas powered on over a period of time. So you have 3, 4, 5 years to upgrade your equipment, and then you'll be fine. I think that's where it's going to go, or else it's never going to work if you don't actually eventually ban them, in a future date.
And that would be by the city of Miami, Dade County.
I think so, but code enforcement, how that is in the city, it's going to be a tough one to find people for that. That's a long road, but I think we got to start someplace voluntarily, and then hopefully try to get that, where it's where they're outlawed here, and then see if the city enforces it or not. Yes, Hank.
I really like what you just said. I think it would be very gradual. It could turn out to be a huge undertaking, and we just it's hard for us to do things like that. We don't have staff. We're all volunteers. We don't have time for things like that. I really applaud Rachel for initiating this and going about it so thoughtfully. I think that it might have to become a citywide ordinance at some point. And knowing how these things go, that could just take a very long time. So I like the idea of some voluntary kind of program. I will say that we have a guy who does our yard, and I'm always struck that he is always unreachable because he's wearing headphones. And I always wondered why he was wearing headphones, but I think he's probably doing it to preserve his hearing.
Yeah, so I think the
One thing
first,
that was really interesting in the carve out, like of the way we can carve out another angle. There's a lot of research, and I'll dig a little more into it, specifically about elderly and children. In children, that the capacity of their air intake is much higher, just as they're a growing body compared to an adult, right? So their air intake is proportionally higher than like ours. And one thing that they pointed out is because of that, the amount of particulate matter that's thrown around in the air, the dirt and the spores and the things like that, actually has a pretty high impact, mostly on children, but then also on elderly, who are, tend to be struggling with their breathing. And so I wonder if there's, in terms of reaching out to the city, maybe the easy ask is to prohibit or limit, I don't know, maybe it's phased, that there's no gas leaf blowers within a certain radius of schools, public parks where there's children playgrounds, elderly facilities or those that are supporting, the elderly. So there could be, and I'm referring to city-owned property. So maybe that's one of the carve-outs that we could ask and go to Russell as sort of an example. And then if that starts to get momentum, kind of take it to the community level as well, or do a parallel, two parallel things.
well, I think you're right. I think doing the city level, same thing they did with the Roundup. It was the city level, but the city didn't use it anymore.
Yeah.
And then I guess the next things would really be, maybe our job needs to be polling, just find out how many people really, because if we do this effort and like you find there's like, very small support, then, it's going to be mute. The city's not going to be able to pass it either. So maybe the thing is to maybe,
Right.
Get a poll out there to see how many people are interested in improving the situation and not putting out any exact ideas on how to get it done or when, just if that's something we want to tackle. It's probably the best thing to do.
That sounds like a really good idea, to petition the city to eliminate leaf blowers from their usage, and then by example, it's hopefully will flow downhill, much like the Roundup.
Right.
And one of our guests, Marlene, mentions that there are requirements for the landscapers in the city, and they've got to attend a half-day course. It'd be interesting to see what that course is, and if it does touch on. Marlene, maybe you can jump in. Are you familiar with it? Does it touch on the noise factor or when and hours or just?
No, I'm not familiar with what it is. I know that we've been advised that our landscapers are supposed to be getting a certificate so they know how to handle the lawns in Coconut Grove. So that's all I know about it now, but seems like this could be a likely add-on.
Okay.
That's
Like
definitely something to
getting a
look into.
landscaper certificate soon. Yeah. I think that might be on my summer reading list, getting a landscaper certificate.
Okay.
I do know that I have a group of friends that live at the Sonesta, and they are just disgusted with the early morning before they're supposed to be doing leaf blowing. And it's the city employees that are doing it before 7 a.m. and it's waking a lot of people up, and they can't really seem to get any relief. But it's a big topic, I think, in the neighborhood.
Well, now that I know some of this, these facts and figures, recommended sleeping noise is 45, right? So a leaf blower is 2 times as loud as what you're supposed to be sleeping with. All right, well, I think this gives me a good outline of things to tackle. I guess my first hesitation was, I don't know if this Larissa mentioned, is there support for it? I think there is. And I think there's multiple prong approach in order to sort of get the momentum going and then lead by example and sort of develop a timeline that maybe we can eventually get to.
That's great. I think so.
Okay,
All right. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel.
thanks.
Anyone from the public have any comment on the leaf blower noise initiative? Very good. Since we have a lot of people on, I think for the reconstruction of the Douglas Road and Highway, I want to see if, Hank, do we have the person on that's going to be presenting the proposed plan?
I think that is Yannick Fernandez. Is that right, Yannick?
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Yannick Fernandez. I'm representing the Miami-Dade County Department of Transportation and Public Works. I'm sorry I had to turn off the camera because I'm running out of battery, charging the phone. We have the consultant here that's working on the design for this intersection. The Miami-Dade County has identified the intersection of Ingram Highway at Douglas Road for different improvements. The consultant who's doing the design is A&P Consulting, and we have here also on the call Alejandro Leon, who's going to be showing the specific details that we're proposing for this intersection. Can we have access to share the screen?
Yes. Who is going to share the screen?
Alejandro, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Alejandro. Okay, just a second. Okay. You got it, Alejandro. You should be able to share your screen now.
Okay. Is it visible?
No.
Not yet.
Sorry. Oh, here it is. Sorry. All right, it would be helpful if I hit share screen.
There we go.
No. All right, give me a second to get it back up. There we go. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Beautiful. I don't know if it's in the way. Is the banner of the cameras of the shots in the way? The banner of the.
No, we're good.
Okay, perfect.
We're okay.
So, again, do you want me to present or you'll be presenting? I'll be presenting, correct?
Yeah, go ahead, Alejandro.
Okay, thank you. So, at the intersection of Ingraham Douglas, what's being done is actually a replacement of the existing strain pole signalized intersection that's there and replacing with a mast arm signalized intersection. On what I'm showing on the screen, towards the top of the screen is north, and so it's Douglas Avenue coming down and Ingram Highway here at an angle. We're proposing a proposed mast arm which would cross Douglas Avenue.
What?
Douglas Road, excuse me, Douglas Road. And also providing a pedestrian crossing at this location, which currently there is no pedestrian crossing. We'll be installing sidewalk along the eastern side of the right-of-way to basically provide a connection of the Commodore Trail, which currently does not exist, up to the connection point for the north. And because we will be providing this this pedestrian crossing here, and we'll also be providing a signalized movement for the park lane exit to be able to control, so that it wouldn't be basically, so when the pedestrian is crossing the intersection, that they have a phase to cross uninterrupted. Let me see, I get down here to the roadway plan. Okay, this is just the roadway plan, same location, to get a better idea of the roadway improvements which are going on in this area. As now north is going to be to the right on the page. So you have Ingram Highway here, and you have Douglas Road here. The shared use path is being installed, as you can see, along the eastern right of way, and connecting to the shoulder as it continues north on Ingram Highway, on Douglas Road. And then also you're going to see that we're calling out multiple trees, both within the right of way here on the east side, as well as in this corner here, for relocation due to either site distance triangle issues or also to impacts to the or to provide the space in order to provide the connection of the Commodore Trail.
Alejandro,
many trees?
before we get into, I think a lot of the issue here is going to be looking at the physical landscaping and the change. Before we get into that discussion, I want to ask a couple of questions because
Okay.
I've lived in that corner for many years, and when the traffic light went up, there's been a couple of problems, and I've reached out and called to the city and the county, and nothing's really been resolved on it. It's the actual timing of the traffic light. Seems to be very one-sided towards northbound Douglas Road. And also I know you can go southbound on Douglas, even if there's a red light. There's a sign there that says, if you're continuing on Douglas, continuing on Ingram Highway, you can go after a full stop. And that is posted up there. But I find, having been in that line many, many times, people either aren't reading the sign or don't read English or whatever the case may be, but they wait till so that creates a huge backup. And if there's any way that we could create any kind of passing going southbound, either there or even with signaling, having green arrows going to the right and just red arrows going straight down Douglas, so that it's more obvious that people can do that. Is anything being done about the timing of the signaling of the intersection right now?
Okay, so actually, that actually got a little bit tricky here because of the implementation of the pedestrian crossing. Because what happens is once you put the pedestrian crossing, a red, when the southbound Douglas Road traffic will normally get the red, now it could be a red for a pedestrian crossing movement and not necessarily a red for the traffic on Ingram Highway. And obviously, the vehicle will have to stop if it's a pedestrian crossing. So
right.
The sign as it's originally there no longer works because of the pedestrian crossing being installed. So it is in signal and review in the signals department. But what we do have is actually replacing, instead of a static sign, which has the turn red, turns allowed once you come to a full stop, is we're actually putting up a blank out sign at this location. And what the blank out sign does is that if the red is for a pedestrian movement or for a movement exiting Park Lane, it would turn on and say no turn on red because it could be a conflicting movement. But other than that, if it's just a red for the northbound Ingram Highway to have the green, it will no longer be flashing. So it would be free for them to continue southbound.
Excuse me, Alejandro.
Correct?
Alejandro, I gave you control of the, you're the host now, and somebody is texting me asking to be let in. So can you go please to the participants? There should be someone waiting to be admitted, and all you have to do is click on admit.
All right, I just hit them. There was 5 people waiting in the room. I wasn't aware that I had to let them in.
I'm sorry. There can only be one host at a time. Sorry, Alejandro, you're the host at the moment.
Okay, so I invited them in, and if I see that the warning comes up again, I'll invite them into the room.
Thank you. All you need to do is click on admit. Sorry to interrupt you. Thank you.
No, it's fine. I'm sorry, I didn't know.
So Alejandro, I understand, so there's going to be a pedestrian access across Douglas, which is very important because it's a very difficult crossing there. Now, Park Avenue, it's closed off to vehicular traffic and it's going to maintain closed off. Is that correct? On Park Avenue, not Park Lane.
Sorry, I meant Park Lane. Park Avenue, yes. Park Avenue, the vehicle traffic is being maintained closed. Correct.
Okay. Okay. So now if we go into the that tight right of way where you talk about the trees and the relocation of trees, I know that right now that is a very tight area. There's some I believe, some type of invasive kind of ficus trees right along the curb edge there of Park Lane and Douglas, going around that curve there. There's a fire hydrant there also, a little bit further down, where the fire hydrant is it'd be north of Park Lane.
North of Park,
Right.
north of Park Lane, so this area, sorry.
Exactly, that little corner there. So
Okay,
there's a fire hydrant there, and there's a lot of trees that are growing very close to the street. So that's, I think, probably the ones you're talking about relocating or removing, I think.
yeah, we're probably there for relocations.
So some of those are pretty, so there's some pretty large trees there that have, I'd say, good, 15 to 20 inch diameter base. Are those all, you're saying relocate or just removed?
We are showing them, we're proposing them as relocations.
You can't relocate them.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna relocate, or that type is gonna relocate.
And they shouldn't be tampered with at all. They should remain there.
Well, let's look at the whole project as a whole, and we can go back and see. I think if we could go back and see exactly with a detailed tree survey where the locations are of these trees and how much they're going to impact the sidewalk or the pedestrian access, I think would probably be something we would like to take a look at and see really which ones are being impacted and which one may not be impacted.
It's just really turning into a big playground. I don't believe in taking trees away, destroying them for this. Nobody's been killed at that corner. Nobody's been injured.
Well, look, this is an improvement. The city's always, city council.
It's a man-made improvement. It is man-made improvement, yes, but that's subjective. It's not necessarily an improvement.
What do we
Any
have?
alternatives
What do we
been-
want to improve?
Have any alternatives been made to do this project but keep the trees? I think all the residents that surround Park Lane and North Bay Homes Drive do not want their tree canopy touched, which this plan calls for eliminating all of those trees.
Well, I think we need to do this in order to fight this with some kind of clarity and facts. I would like to propose to see an exact tree survey done of where the trees are, because I see the trees business plan saying relocating all of them. They're very difficult to relocate. You're not going to relocate those trees.
Yeah,
It will not
Marcelo-
relocate. You can't relocate those.
Marcelo,
trees.
you
That's what
know,
I'm saying.
they
That's what I'm
can't
saying.
relocate those trees.
Exactly. I don't think those are, I think there's been an error here in identifying the types of trees and where they are. Instead of doing a complete swipe to saying relocate the whole thing, it's not going to work. So if there's any kind of arborist report and tree survey that could be shown exactly what's being proposed and what's being done, I think we can tackle this a little bit more intelligently.
So an arborist report I don't have with me, but the trees were located as part of our survey. They were not estimated locations or anything like that. It
Okay.
is placed as per our estimate, and this information was pulled out of our survey.
Alejandro, do you have a better plan sheet that represents the trees at that location? Maybe a detail?
A more visual plan would be very helpful.
We do not have another sheet right now showing the trees, other than, as you see in here, on the roadway plans where you could see, for example.
Could you blow up that section or maybe
can
zoom in on your
yes.
screen?
Yes, I could do that.
You know, there is space behind those existing trees in the wall to put a path. Maybe not
Yes.
a sidewalk, but a path back there. And some of the neighbors have been out there. We've looked at it, we've surveyed it. And we were never warned about this. And I think somebody should come back out there with us and see what we're talking about. And that way we can keep the trees and snake the path behind the trees.
Agreed.
Excuse me, this is.
Anything to keep those trees, anything. You're gonna spoil that whole area. It's gonna be spoiled.
What kind of trees are going to be planted? They wouldn't canopy until after all of us are long dead and gone.
This is Yannick. With respect to the comment on placing the path behind the trees, if you notice the black dashed line, that's the right-of-way line. So we cannot go into private property to do any improvements.
We've spoken with the owners and there's a dispute about the appraisal of the land and the fence, and the owners are totally in agreement with us. They're willing to have the path snake close to their fence behind the trees. There's an old coral rock wall that's broken up in there that can be placed in between the trees and you'd have a complete buffer.
That's the issue is that this will mean the project is going to be completely killed because
Good.
we will have to buy right of way.
Good.
We would have to
Don't
buy
have a
right of
problem
way.
with that.
But he asked for it.
We would have to buy private right of way and acquire the funds to buy that right of way. And by
Neighbors
the time
are willing
that
to work with that. The neighbors are willing to work with that. We've already spoken with some of them, and there's one property in particular, and they're willing to work with us on that.
Well, let me just interrupt you for a little bit. You know, we have to make things that are going to actually work. I think that to ask the city or the county to go into private property and start doing public improvements on that, it's never going to fly from liability perspective, from just use. It just doesn't work that way, unfortunately.
Well, in order to save the trees, maybe we should start thinking that way.
Yes, anything to
okay.
save those trees, anything.
You know, one thing, if I could say something, is it seems to me this is a broad swath trying to do a 10-foot wide walkway there and separating it from the street. If for everybody that knows that corner real well, the biggest challenge is when you're going on that crosswalk is all the cars coming northbound that looks like they're going to hit you. So, but you don't need 10 feet. I mean, this is one of those that we have to finesse it. We can
You need it wide enough for a wheelchair, and that's it. You don't need it any wider.
And then everybody, that intersection, everybody will have to go slow, the cars, the people and so forth. But to just say, I'm going to put a 10-foot wide thing, which means
Right.
wall to wall. It's asphalt wall to wall, exactly like in front of the camp ponds. And
Right.
that's, you know, the tree canopy's gone. Then at that point, there is no
Exactly.
other street.
And you're paving paradise and you're spoiling it. And it's being done everywhere now. It has to be stopped.
I think if you came back
Especially
out
when
there
there's
and
no
met with
problem.
us, you would see what we're
This
talking
is
about.
this
Yeah, there's
solution
no
is such a
problem.
That is the question.
Excuse
What
me.
is the problem? that
Marcelo?
we're trying to solve?
Yes.
Marcelo,
guys,
may I speak, please?
Yes, let's keep everyone at one time, please.
May I
go ahead,
speak,
Hank.
please?
Go ahead, Hank.
Okay, I've been listening to this. I am the co-founder of a group called Friends of the Commodore Trail. And that we have a long history with this intersection. In November of 2019, the Miami Foundation awarded us a grant to improve this intersection because we had identified this intersection as possibly the most dangerous place on the Commodore Trail.
No
Now,
argument there.
I'd appreciate it if you all would let me speak for just a couple of minutes so I can give you some background about this. We have only been hearing about the opposition to this. Okay, we identified this as one of the most dangerous places on the Commodore Trail. And I have to say that the person who said no one's been killed there, why bother to do anything? That I think that's a really dangerous attitude to take. If we're waiting for somebody to be killed there, that could very well happen. The trail, because of the trees that are there, and the configuration of the entire intersection, the trail is forced to narrow to about 2 feet with no protection from oncoming traffic that's heading north, heading from Ingram to Douglas. So to say that there's no problem there that needs to be fixed is very wrong. There is a serious problem there that needs to be fixed. Now, whether this is the exact right solution to fix it or whether some other solution can be reached, I don't know. But I want to dispel the impression that nothing is wrong there and all we need to do is save the trees. The fact is, there is one huge Ficus religiosa, an invasive species that is completely blocking the Commodore Trail. Now, at some point, we may all be forced to make a decision between the safety of users of the Commodore Trail and trees. And that is a really difficult decision to make. But if I'm going to choose safety of pedestrians and bicyclists and parents and children on a trail, believe me, that is going to be my choice always. We can plant new trees. If this thing is done the way it's proposed now, that intersection will most definitely look different. But is it going to be a hideous, ugly place? I don't think so. New trees can be planted. So I just want that to be taken into account. And I would like to say that we know people are opposed to this project. We're very well aware of that. But I hope that some time will be given to the people who are for it. I know there are people in this meeting now who are for it. Thank you.
Well, let's do this. I'm gonna call some people that have their hands up, and if you could just make a quick comment, you try to keep it under 2 minutes, and we'll go ahead and call on everyone. So there's a little icon, you can put a hand up with the icon, and it's easier for you to go. So I'm gonna go in order here. Christine Rupp, you have your hand up?
I did. Good evening, everybody. This is Chris Rupp. I'm the executive director of Dade Heritage Trust, and you might wonder why somebody's got some background noise.
Yeah, everyone, please mute your phone, please. Please mute.
Thank
if you're
you.
not talking. Thank you.
Why Dade Heritage Trust might be involved in this issue. I can tell you that for reasons of preservation that deal with environmental, cultural, and obviously architectural, we support cycling and safe cycling throughout Miami. And the Friends of the Commodore Trail are a very responsible, highly regarded group who take all of those things into consideration. Bike trails are very democratic. They're for everybody. And this is a designated bike trail. It's an historic bike trail. And while absolutely the loss of tree canopy is something that's on everyone's mind now, I mean, Dade Heritage Trust has an initiative called the Miami Canopy Coalition. So as Hank said, this is a double-edged sword, but this is a project that looks at the greater good for everybody and the use of that trail in a safe manner. And I think that working with the county and sharing the community's concerns with the loss of tree canopy, certainly plans can be made to ensure that this bike path, this historic bike path for everyone's use, that will hopefully, you know, when it becomes safe, get people out of cars and into their bikes or on their bikes and get people walking, is really the foremost issue here, making it safe and secure for everyone's usage. And I think that's something that as a community, Coconut Grove can come together with the county. And I really encourage that. For those of you that are passionate about tree canopy loss, I get it, but this is a project for the common good.
All right, thank you, Christine. Baird Lowry, you have your hand up?
I do. Thank you very, very much, Marcelo. I live exactly right across from this. My address is 4116 South Douglas Road. I walk this intersection 2 or 3 times every day of my life with my dog. I know it extremely well. What I'd like to bring up first is a very practical point that no one has talked about. There are some very large trees of many different species. There are some large Japanese ficus that are being referred to. I don't know that it's correct that they're invasive. That needs to be researched a little more carefully. But what I can tell you is they are semi-deciduous. They drop their leaves at least 2 times a year. There is a massive volume of biological material that gets dropped. And what's really happening is these trees are self-mulching. And because this is a dangerous corner with blind spots and inadequate controls, overall, the trees have grown into the street over 10, 20 years that never get stopped. The city of Miami or Metro-Dade County never does any pruning. The neighbors can't prune out there with themselves or their landscaping crews because there's so much traffic. And There are blind spots, so it's too dangerous to get out there. So what I strongly suggest is that we first ask the city of Miami or Metro-Dade County, whoever's the appropriate agency, to stop traffic one day and to have a major cleanup crew and pruning be done. These Japanese ficus that are being talked about sucker and get bushy at the base. If they were properly cleaned up, I'm not talking about any canopy prune at all. I'm talking just about base level, ground level cleanup. You're going to get 2 or 3 shoulder to shoulder people to be able to walk and ride their bikes much more safely around this area. And I also question how any accurate surveys could be done with the overgrowth that's there. If you actually walk on that side that's being talked about on the east side of Douglas Road, the actual bike path that's marked and painted on the street is been grown over by at least half the marked lane. So there really is a need for a first step for proper cleanup and pruning to get back to the marked lanes that are there. And it might be much more sufficient for everybody. That's really ought to be a first step. And we really need, but because of this traffic spot and the blind spots and everything that's talked about, this has to be an area that gets maintained professionally with traffic stops once in a while. You can't safely prune or clean there with the traffic. It just can't be done. So that really should be a first step.
Very good. Thank you. Again, try to keep everything into 2 minutes. I have a bunch of hands up here. I'm going to go ahead and the next person I see on the list is Louis Ajamil.
Hi, thank you, Fernando. Listen, I don't disagree that the intersection needs improvements, but like the previous speaker spoke, if we live on Park Lane and we walk our dog up there 3 times a day, so we know it where I bike that thing. So it's not one against the other. It is taking a swath and just extending it because it looks good on paper that it has to be 10 feet wide and then wipes out everything. I totally agree that if you go there carefully and do it with a scalpel and say, leave the trees, work around it. The biggest challenge there for any biker from a safety point of view is not getting hit. It is that when you are on Douglas Road and the cars are coming at you from the south to the north on Ingram Highway, you don't know if those people are going to turn or they're just going to plow into you. What this intersection really needs is improvement to that safety factor. If there's ever going to be a killing there, is a car that doesn't turn and just plows into somebody. That's it. And just widening the sidewalk does not.
Okay.
All right.
That's all I can say. And then I do notice on this drawing that this gray area, you look like you are actually widening the road to the west and smoothing it and actually making it probably faster for cars to come down and make a southbound swing from Douglas to Ingram. So on one side, you're saying I'm not taking right away, but it looks like on the north side, on the west side, you are taking right away. So I just noticed that. And I think that we can come to a solution that improves that intersection for everybody, but everybody give a little and let's keep some of the trees.
Very good. Thank you. Jane Issa, you're next.
Hi. Well, I'm very disappointed to hear that they're just sort of bulldozing their way through this little area. The trees are very important. I don't see how anybody could see them as something you can just remove. They're assets. They increase property values. We marvel at them all the time. But I just think the path can be, they can clear it more than it is now and create something a little more safe, and it will still be a grove vibe, and as opposed to making it look like, you know, Kindle Drive, Dadeland, some of these other places. The grove is becoming more and more ordinary because of this type of approach. You have to have tree canopy, and if they plant trees, that doesn't mean anything because it's going to take too long for them to reach the maturity that these trees are. And, you know, these trees filter the air, they cut down noise, they do a lot of good. So I don't believe in doing that to trees.
Very good. Thank you. Yeah, and that's why we're not, Ken, that's why we're here. We're talking about it. And we have, you know, the decision makers here on the call follow to discuss this. Kurt Kaminer has a hand up.
Yes, thank you very much. I'd just like to say that, you know, in 33 years of living here, I adore the Commodore Trail and I've used it quite a bit, but I have never, ever ventured down this particular area, mainly because of this intersection. I would love to see improvements like this. I also believe, you know, that trees are almost essential basically for walking and riding. So there must be some, as difficult as it is, if there is right of way that the owners of those properties are willing to work on, I mean, if there's a ability to keep the trees as protection and actually create something safe for the Commodore Trail, that would be wonderful. If not, the fact is that, you know, as the arborists really have to look at this, take a look, see what actually is an invasive species, see the actual plans for this, and at the end, I'd just like to leave it with this, and that's that beautiful trees are beautiful trees, but there's somebody dead that was just trying to enjoy the grove. Well, they can't enjoy it at all if they're dead.
Thank you. Fred Teger?
Teger, that's
Teger.
fine. Hi, yeah, I would just like to say, I love our trees in the Grove. They're so important. However, I also love the Commodore Trail. I bike virtually every week, and this intersection is terrifying for an adult, and it certainly makes it almost impossible for anybody to take their children on that section of the trail, because the cars are literally within 2 feet of you trying to come around that corner. And the Commodore Trail is a gem. For us to not be able to take advantage of it is a terrible shame. And we need to find some way to manage to have this intersection be safe and enjoyable.
Very good. Thank you very much. Mel Meinhardt?
Thank you, Marcelo, and thank you everybody for your service here. I'm speaking today. A lot of you guys and gals know me for the last 20 some years in my efforts to save the trees at the Home Depot and other big projects that we've done. And we all agree that without the trees, we don't have Coconut Grove. Done. Agreed. I am now the chairman of the Friends of the Commodore Trail, and that's 1,224 people like you that are all committed to the safety and usability of the Commodore Trail, all the way from Cocoa Pump Circle up to the Rickenbacker Causeway. And, you know, I'm a Center Grove person, and I've driven by this place a lot and go, ooh, this looks crazy. But I never really got it because I heard about, I have many friends on Park Avenue and Park Lane, but I never really got the problem until relatively recently, when I was going down there and I saw, I don't know if it was the Carrollton cross-country team or the Ransom track team, and here they are being forced out into the street during rush hour after school because they're trying to get their way around. And that just to me went, oh my gosh, this could be my 14-year-old out here getting, you know, ready to be hit. And so I started talking more and more to the neighbors who live there, and everybody really cares and is passionate. But another fellow had made a big impression on me, and that was a young man, young, in his mid-30s. He had just moved here. He was pushing his baby carriage northbound on Douglas, right at this intersection. And he said, and I asked him about his welcome to the neighborhood. He said, oh my gosh, this is the most frightening thing in my life as I try to take my young family down to the Center Grove. So my point here is that the solution, it's not enough to just simply kick the can down the road. We have to act. We have to do something. We cannot put this decision off. The safety and the future are ours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Steve Dugloff?
Yes, I ride on this area quite a bit, and it looks to me that we're making a speedway out of this area instead of what we want in Coconut Grove. We're satisfying the people in Pinecrest and whoever wants to avoid US 1 to get to where they're going. And I think that we're destroying our Coconut Grove. I think we need to prune some trees. I think the Commodore Trail is very important, but I think that we're going at it the wrong way. And for whoever came to this meeting without an arborist report, really didn't come prepared, and we ought to send him home. So, and if you plant new trees, it'll be 50 years before they grow back. So I think what we're doing here is creating a speedway to make the people happy from Pinecrest. No different than what we're going to do somewhere on Bayshore Drive, where that intersection is. I think it's where there's a three-way intersection. The same topic will come up in a year or two. I won't be on the council, but the same topic will come up because we want to make a speedway for the people from Pinecrest. And
Very
I'm
good.
against.
Thank you, Steve. There's somebody here with a 104 as their ID.
Yeah, Marcelo, thanks. That's me and Valerie.
Okay.
Yeah, I thank you everybody for your comments. And my wife and I live down here at the end of Park Lane and North Bay Homes Drive. We take our children up there, we walk there, and I've never found there to be a problem. A couple of things that I think need to be considered, and somebody has already said, how about starting with pruning and just maintaining the area, number one. Number two, and I think just as importantly, why not a sign or a simple something, hey, get off your bike and walk it for the next 20, 40 feet. You know, what's the harm in that? We're supposed to walk our bikes across bridges and other obstacles. Why can't we just walk our bikes across this 20-foot section if somebody is thinking it's such a hazard? But if it's a hazard, why are you riding your bicycle across it at 25, 30 miles an hour? Get off your bike, walk it, or maneuver around the trees. Third, has there been any discussion or thought, there's no reason why folks on the Commodore Trail can't just make a right-hand turn down Park Lane and come back up Bay Homes and bypass this thing. Now, there are certainly many other ways to address this rather than chop down these trees, which I don't think you'll find anybody in favor of.
Okay, thank you. One more person, William's iPhone. Is there William there? Okay, then Larissa.
Sure. These are really some great comments, and what I see are three common themes here. We've got cars, people, and trees. And based on what we've seen tonight, it seems like what we're vying for between people and trees is spot 2 and 3. Why can't either the people or the trees be in spot 1 and 2 and the cars be number 3? This is an improvement to the intersection, which Steve pointed out, it's really for vehicular improvement. That's where I see the main benefit of this project. And
Put it back on mute.
Mute?
Yeah, William, could you mute please? There you go.
Thanks. I know in other sections, you've got Coral Gables that does it a lot. They're putting speed tables, they're putting different traffic calming devices. What about slowing down the traffic? That's number one comment. Number two is, I had some property on Hardy Avenue, and when it was surveyed, the survey came back wrong because there were survey marks that were wrong on Douglas Road. The actual pins on Douglas Road are incorrect. And if you go to the state office of the Office of Survey in the state of Florida, there's also the real actual survey that exists. And that perhaps will allow a little bit more leeway with the right-of-way that's going on. And then the third comment is, yeah, trees are precious and so is safety. So we've got to find a compromise between, and I'm thinking that the cars should take the third spot, not the first or the second.
All right, very good.
And also, last question is, what stage plans are these? 30, 60, 100?
I think these are 100%.
Yeah.
So if I
Can
make a couple quick
Alejandro
comments.
answer? Alejandro,
Marcelo,
are
can
these,
you hear me?
are these
Yes,
100?
where, Alejandro, you still on?
Yes, I am.
Are
So
these,
what phase of the project is this in right now?
This is about to be signed and sealed and sent and shipped over to the county, to the
The
local.
process. Okay.
Correct.
All right. I think William, Bill Waller, is that you on the,
If I may a second, I mean, I'm writing down all these concerns, obviously, but there are some I guess comments that I can clarify some things. Not
Alejandro, let me
necessarily-
do one thing. I'm sorry, Alejandro. There's one more person I want to talk to. He actually lives in the corner there. Let him talk and then I'll bring it right back to you so he can make his comments also. William, you there? He's there?
Okay.
Yeah, Marcelo, thank you. Can you hear me? It's Bill.
Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Good evening, everybody. I, lucky enough, have just bought the house right at the end of Park Lane on the corner there, number 3675 Park Lane. So obviously, very interested in this whole conversation, this whole project. One person said the word use a scalpel. Perfect idea. I think let's have a real cleanup. My house hasn't had any real maintenance outside the front of it for many, many years. We need to do a lot of pruning, a big cleanup, then review the survey itself. And I do believe if we put together a very small working group of half a dozen people, I'd like to be included, to find different alternatives where the trail can be successfully woven around perhaps some of the trees. At the same time, the trees are not lost, and we use our intelligence rather than trying to crack an egg with a sledgehammer. That's what this feels like. I'm only new to the area, so I apologize for that, but I do think we could have a very intelligent approach and satisfy everybody quite easily. And my urgent thing is, I agree with so many of the people who said, let's clean it up first, because you'll find there's another 3 foot of roadway for the Commodore Trail already in existence. It's just under leaves outside my house. It just hasn't been cleared for donkey's years. So my urging to the council would be to say, form a small group, have a little working party, work with the Miami-Dade people, or whoever the right people are, to clean it up, to prune the trees properly, and then look at the survey again, because they can't have done a really good survey because there's so much rubbish outside my house, you can't even get to the bottom of it. So that's my comment in 2 minutes. Thank you, Marcelo.
All right. Thank you, Bill. All right, Alejandro, if you want to go ahead and take some of those comments, and we'll go from there, please.
Well, no, I mean, of the comments, so I'm writing down all the comments, obviously, with the trees and the reducing the impacts to the trees or eliminating the impacts to the trees. But one thing I did want to clarify was that the roadway itself is not being proposed to be widened, or the existing radius out there modified. It really is a milling and resurfacing of the existing asphalt pavement and an establishment of the curb line, at least as it was proposed on the west side. But it wasn't a widening of the roadway itself. And the signal operation itself, the signal itself, again, is not we're not let's say trying to use the signal, I guess, to improve traffic, but it's just to increase capacity, not necessarily improve traffic. But obviously, once we add the pedestrian crossing from Park Avenue over to the trail, then it does require a little bit of work on the operations to make sure that crossing can be safely maintained.
Okay, thank you. I want to make a couple comments just because I'm also very connected to this particular intersection, as I lived on Bay Homes Drive for 20 years. And a high school friend of mine is now paralyzed from an accident in this corner here. Before any traffic light was there, it was kind of a free for all. And there was an accident of not being able to make that turn and hitting a tree. And you know, 3 guys were in the van, you know, one's paralyzed. So this is a very dangerous intersection. I think the traffic light helps a little bit, but people do zoom through there. And I have maybe jogged this path, you know, every day for the last 20 years almost, and it is dangerous. It does need to be improved. But I completely agree that it can be improved, with a scalpel first. There's definitely, what people, being in the construction industry, this is first given to an engineer. Engineers look at only engineering items, right? They look at traffic flow, they look at things, and this is what you get for results. Luckily, we're here in the NCD. Luckily, we're here with Commodore Trail, who can bring this to us before a shovel goes in the ground, and we can discuss it, practically and realistically. I think for sure what I'd like to do is we'll follow up and see which department does control maintenance there, because there has been no maintenance done, and go in there and do a complete cleanup. That's absolutely right. Clean up all the site there, see exactly where the property lines are, confirm surveys, and then from that point on, we can actually decide. I think for sure that sidewalk that's on the east side of Douglas Road is extremely dangerous, and you're basically on the road when you cross there. That does have to be, either swung around trees or maybe some trunks taken off, or just something to make that a little bit better. But there's definitely a way that can be done here where it's a win-win for everyone, because it does have to be improved. It doesn't be maintained. Now, I don't agree with taking out every single tree with a bulldozer and starting from scratch. That's exactly what we don't want to do. But I'm going to see if we can propose with Alejandro or somebody from there to, instead of submitting these plans, is going back to the drawing board again after a cleanup is done and after a certification. Because we got to see, there's a pedestrian cross. There's a lot of things being improved here that that need to be looked at. And I think also it's got to be priority for the pedestrians and the locals, and second priority for the vehicles, which unfortunately is not how this road is going to be treated from the county and from the FDOT level. They want traffic to flow, and we just got to make sure it's going there.
Marcelo,
yes.
can I've been waiting. I finally figured out how to raise my hand on the little screen. I think I live on the corner of Main Highway and Douglas Road, and I can tell you that even though with two 15-mile-an-hour signs for going around that corner, the traffic goes around it 50 miles an hour plus all the time, and it's another very, very dangerous corner. And in fact, a car, before I moved into this old house, a car went through this coral rock wall and ended up in the pool in my backyard. So the danger is the speed, and I completely agree with you that the county has a decided interest in moving as many cars up and down Ingram and Douglas Road as efficiently as possible, and that's what we're fighting against. But trees by themselves are traffic calming devices. So the idea that the last speaker had about both the bikers and the cars have to slow down and maybe not go straight on the Commodore path, but weave in and out among the trees, that needs to be looked at. Traffic calming devices need to be looked at. If the Commodore Trail gets too close to any danger point, you can always use a bollard rather than just take down all the trees. So I think the idea that there's a compromise here that will get us our Commodore Trail, that will get bikers using it, but it all comes down to cars want to go fast up Ingram and Douglas. They want to go as fast as they possibly can. So if the county does not address that primary issue, they may in the end succeed in getting these trees down, but you're just going to have more and more outrage from the citizens, and it will be more and more dangerous, because it's the speed of the cars when they are unobstructed that causes the danger to bikers and pedestrians. That everyone knows that. But we do have this interest on the part of the county because of their overall problems of transport in the city, in the county. This is what the problem is. So I like the fact that some of these trees need to stay just as traffic calming devices. And the trail in this part will have to have a sign saying to bikers, you're going to have to slow down and weave through the trees like everybody else. And I think that's where the solution can lie. And I think a lot of Baird and everybody else, Larissa, they've all come up with the same idea that there is a compromise here, but it's not to remove all these trees. Maybe one or two of them and supplant them with bollards, but it's the speed of the traffic that we've got to deal with. That's what thank you very much.
Absolutely. No, thank you. I think we definitely need to take a second look at this and
Marcelo, may I speak or?
Redesign. Yes, Gloriana, go ahead.
Okay, I just want to have my 2 minutes. I live on Park Lane and I ride my bike on that corner every single day, and everybody's right in this conversation. Something has to be done. It's a very dangerous corner. But I've studied that land in there, but between the trees and the property lines, I've talked to the owner, the new owner that just spoke very eloquently. And I think you're right, Marcelo. If we clear that out in there, I think you'll find that there is space between the trees and the wall. And there's stones in there. You can put buffers, tree, stone, and you can have the most beautiful path behind the trees. You can even put that soft stuff that they put in the grove where the trees are right now. And you wouldn't have to put a big sidewalk in there. And there is space for wheelchair accessibility all the way from the property to Park Lane. And I'd like to be a part of that group. And I think you really need to get a group together and we all meet over there and we study it. And before even any of this stuff is done, so you understand visually what we're trying to say. But
Okay.
yes, something does need to be done, but there is space between the trees and the walls.
So I think one thing we can all agree on, which is always impossible to have everyone agree. And what I'd like to propose is that before anybody meets or does anything out there, is first we can get whatever organization that can clean and resurvey and mark those points on the site would be step number one. Because then we know exactly when we're on right of way, when we're on private property, and we know exactly what's cleared. So I'm going to see if we can try to get that at least cleaned up and marked. And then, yes, then meet with not only residents, but maybe some city officials to explain, what they can or cannot do. And let's see if we can tackle this a different way.
Marcelo, can I make a point, please?
Yes, sir.
There have been a lot of things discussed during this section of the meeting, and maybe there are compromises that can be reached. That would be great. I think that I and the others and friends of the Commodore Trail would love to see a compromise reached. But I want to point out that many of us, I and many others, Mary Monroe Seabrook, who's the co-founder of Friends of the Commodore Trail, I, consultants, professionals, arborists, we have been out there inspecting that intersection for the past 2 years and trying to figure out what could be done that would make it safer. And I just want to point out that this is, I have to disagree with Steve. This is not a speedway project. Far from it. As Alejandro pointed out, they're not changing the roadway at all. What they're trying to do is widen and make safer the Commodore Trail. This is about the Commodore Trail. And I can tell you that we looked at the one big ficus there and we said, what are we going to do with that? But the trail could go on either side of it, maybe, but then it has to go into somebody's private property. Is the property owner going to be happy about that? Will the property owner readily surrender property so the trail can go on either side of the tree and we can keep the tree? We thought, how will we ever get that done? So I just want to point out that the Commodore, may I finish, please?
Yes,
May I finish,
one at a time, please.
The Commodore Trail is about to initiate a master plan for the entire 5 miles of the trail. The trail has been on the county's planning books since 1969, and almost nothing has been done to improve it. So these kinds of issues are going to come up over and over again, because unlike the Ludlam Trail, unlike the Underline, the Commodore Trail is in places that are already built up. The Commodore Trail is going to have to fight for its own right to exist. And that's what we're talking about right now. We're saying, oh, well, make the bikers get off their bikes. Then it's not a trail anymore. So I'm sorry, I don't agree, make the bikers get off their bikes. That doesn't work for me. Thank you.
Okay.
Marcelo, it's Bill. Can you hear me?
Yes, Bill. Let me make one comment.
I would like just to make, Marcelo, I'd like to make one comment for the gentleman who just spoke. This is not only about the Commodore Trail. I want that to be very clear. And I think the people that didn't hear me, I'd like you to hear me again, sir. Just listen. I have said, perhaps there is a way to go round the trees. Perhaps it is onto my land. Perhaps here's the way we can compensate. Perhaps there is a way of everybody being successful in this. If you are intransigent, as you sound, which I'm sorry about, nobody will win because it will only create rancor. I'm the new owner of that property. Nobody has done anything to it for many, many years. There's a lovely man who used to have it as a holiday home. As I think several people have said earlier, we need to do the real cleanup so that the surveyors can actually see really what's there. And we don't treat this with a sledgehammer. We treat it with a scalpel. And I am perfectly happy to have that conversation in a small group of intelligent people where we all understand what each group has an interest here. So for goodness sake, let's come together. Let's not be intransigent. Thank you, Marcelo. Back to you.
All right, thank you. Let me
comment.
Let me wrap this up in something maybe more positive. You know, this is the Grove is not standard, right? We have these quirky, a lot of these streets won't even be allowed to be built today because they're just off. That's what makes the Grove the Grove. And it's a perfect situation where we have to force the city and the county to bend the rules because you can't put standard rules in the Grove. It's not going to work. So I think it behooves all of us, again, to work together on this opportunity and see if we can get together where we first know the facts. We got to know exactly where the property lines are, you know, where the curb cuts are proposed to be. And right now, if you go out there, I don't think you can really do a proper assessment of what the properties start and end. And yes, the Commodore Trail needs to be improved there. And I think if we just take one step at a time, like you said, Hank, it's been since 1960s, I think I'm done. I think if we work on this for a little bit, a couple more months and try to get this resolved, we can come up with an amicable, you know, way that everyone can be a little bit unhappy and get this thing moved forward. But I think this is a perfect situation where we can tell the city and the engineers, this is not standard. You cannot apply a standard system here. It's got to work around our natural environment. This is what the NCD is all about. And let's see if we can come with a cooperative owner on the side, if we can come up with a solution that'll work for everyone. But I know it's not going to go down the regular ranks of regular engineers because regular engineering here, you know, I'm sure this intersection right now does not comply with all the engineering codes we have for traffic movement, and we gotta move that way. So I propose that we at least get this thing identified to get cleaned up and marked and staked, and then get a group out there. Commodore Trail should be represented, the immediate neighbors should be represented, and some city members should be represented to see what can be done that will not take forever to get done and not put any liability on any one person or any facility, and then maintain a plan to keep this thing going forward. So I know we're at 7:30 and it's my job to keep them moving. So we're going to move on to the next step, but we will definitely keep, I have the contacts for all the people in the Commodore Trail, the city, and the immediate neighbors. So we will definitely follow up on this and try to get this thing moving forward.
Thank you, Marcelo, and please keep us informed. Thanks.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everybody for participating in this important discussion, and I hope I did not seem intransigent. I think that most people who know me would say that that's about the last thing I am. I want to work with people. Alejandro, you are currently the host, and you need to make me the host again. Alejandro?
I believe I stopped sharing. Is there something else I have to do?
Yeah, you have to make me the host unless you want to remain and continue to be the host.
How do I get it back to you?
You click on more, and then I think you go to my name and make me the host. Maybe this is not worth bothering with.
Thank you very much, Alejandro, for doing this.
Yes, thank you. Let's forget that, Alejandro. If just don't turn off your computer, please. You may disconnect all of us.
No, I think I got it back to you already.
Okay, thank you. Yes,
Okay.
You did. Thank you.
Okay. Since we have another item here that seems to have brought a lot of attention, let's skip that one, which was the Fuller Street closure permit that's expiring. I believe I saw, is Ken Russell still on the phone, on the call with us?
I am. Good evening.
Okay, great. So I know this was an issue that was brought up. I know you've spoken to Hank about it a couple of times. It came out in the spotlight. I know that you have, you're well connected with this. So if you could just give a quick overview of how it came to play that it was closed off, under what conditions, and what maybe are the obstacles going forward with it.
Thank you. I'll try to be quick. And first of all, just want to commend you guys. 40 people on this Zoom is really impressive advocacy. So thanks everyone for participating. And I know these things are complicated. It's always balance. It's always balance. So Fuller Street, I've been working on Fuller Street now quietly for several years, always dreaming of a way to make it a pedestrian oasis of some sort. This was met with resistance years ago because of the lack of on-street parking, because of the way the Grove is laid out, and because of people's not such great interest in walking to an underground garage. We do have parking capacity, but it's just not as convenient as the on-street right in front of the shop you want to go to. With that in mind, I was always told, listen, when we build the additional garages we need, or when we get access back to the post office, then we can talk about closing, whether it's Commodore or Fuller. And so I've kind of tabled those ideas, but I had started working on the groundwork. And by that, I meant putting together what would be needed procedurally, legislatively, and politically in order to get it done, even before pandemic. And so for Fuller Street, which seemed to be the lower hanging fruit, there's really two main entities. There's two property owners, one on, I guess, is that the north side or the east side? The north side, and one on the south side. And so you've got Barracuda on one end, and you've got what used to be Fuddruckers and Fiorentina Plaza on the other side. There's one property owner on each. So it's a relatively simple process. And then we started looking at what would that be like. Two methods that it could be done legislatively. One would be a vacation of the street, where you vacate the right-of-way and turn it back into private property. This reverts the land 50-50 down the middle of the road to each property owner. The pluses for the government side on that is the redevelopment would be on the shoulders of those property owners, and they wouldn't have to worry about our red tape necessarily or our investment. The downside is we could lose control of it, and it could be actually assembled and developed. The other method, rather than vacating the street, would be making it non-vehicular street, so that it would only be available for cyclists, pedestrians, and pedestrian activation. And that is the path we've been looking at as the most interesting. Then along came the pandemic, and it couldn't have, if there's any silver lining of this pandemic, it jump-started this process because businesses needed to survive, and we couldn't eat indoors. It was either eat outdoors or stay locked down. So the county opened up a permitting process for free access for restaurants to use both parallel parking and street closures. Most restaurants took advantage of the parallel parking. It was a free permit. The city and the Coconut Grove bid facilitated that, helped everyone fill it out, helped them spend on the things that they would decorate it with and make it safe. But only Fuller was the only street that took advantage of the actual full closure. I had a meeting with all of the Commodore restaurants to ask if they wanted it. And in the end, it surprised me, but they actually did not want full closure of Commodore. They wanted to keep flow going. They didn't want it to look like a ghost town in case they weren't getting enough traffic. And they also did want their parking out front of the restaurants as part of their business driver. What happened after that, as you all know, was just magic. Fuller has activated in a really special way for people just to come and spend time. We've watched it, we've encouraged it, we've invested in it. And now the state of emergency is coming to a close. The county said, just procedurally, you will lose that permit. They didn't mean to take it away in an intentional way. It's just the state of emergency is closing. But we believe, and I've gotten more advocacy on this than any issue facing us this entire year. The overwhelming will is to keep it closed and for open access to pedestrians and dining and shopping and activation. So at this week's city commission meeting, day after tomorrow, there's an item coming from Public Works at our request to actually extend the temporary closure. It's a procedural necessity to the county in order for them to grant us a new temporary permit to keep it closed. And so that's what we're doing at City Commission on Thursday. So that should take care of the short-term issue of keeping it as it is. The long-term issue is, what is our goal here? What do we want this street to become? Do we think of Giralda, where it's really built out with curbless and cobblestone and bollards and trees down the middle? Or do we simply want it closed off for more pedestrian access and sometimes cars, or weekends only? I mean, there's so many options we could go on this. My vision had always been a full-on closure, almost like Espanola Way in Miami Beach, where you've got the strung lights and a very nice atmosphere. We brought this up at the Coconut Grove bid, and the response surprised me, but others of the different parts of the business community. And we realized, what are we doing this for? Is it just to give one restaurant an entire street to, great, for them to have, multiplied sales and square footage at no cost to them, but does it help the Grove as a whole? And I don't think it's a binary conversation where we say yes or no, it's for one or it's for everyone. But I think we can find an equitable way to look at it, because that street currently costs nothing to the restaurant to use. But sidewalk cafe permits, which every restaurant pays if they're using any piece of the right of way on a normal basis, is not cheap. It's using city and county land and right of way for a business purpose. And so Green Streets, for example, pays $24,000 a year for all of the sidewalk dining space that it takes up. That feeds the city, that feeds the Coconut Grove bid. It helps us with beautification and events and all sorts of things. But I've waived those fees during the pandemic period just to help restaurants recover. So it would be an unlevel playing field to keep a full free, hundreds and hundreds of square feet for one restaurant while others are forced to pay even just to use the sidewalk. So we have to look at this as not what we want Barracuda to become, but what do we want Fuller Street to become? Eventually there will be Chug's restaurant on one side, Barracuda on the other, the salon at the far end. And I think about 8 retail bays on that south side. So this isn't just for one entity. The idea is I want to work with the public through charrette process, whatever is necessary to see what sort of activations are interesting to you, whether it's weekend concerts or art shows or kids events, or what is it that we're looking for? Is it busking? Is it all restaurant? Is it outdoor retail and doing flea markets? And once we get that sense of it, I am very happy to put in for permanent applications with the county. So it is a city street, but it is county managed in terms of right of way. All right of way is managed by the county. All signage, all lights, all flow is managed by the county. So we, even as a city with a city-owned street, we would need to request this of the county. I've spoken with Daniela Vincava, our mayor. I've spoken with Raquel Regalado, our commissioner, and they are on board to explore this with no promise or guarantee at this point. But Raquel went so far as to go out there with the director of the TPO, Transportation Planning Organization, to actually look at what this would look like from a logistics perspective. And that's great. It's very detail oriented and very objective oriented. And so I can see she's already thinking about how this would work if it would, and if she'll get behind it, she will definitely help make it happen. And so they're gonna have to study the flows. Does this have a negative impact on the flow, the circulator between Commodore, Grand, and Main? And all those pluses and minuses will be weighed. But I do believe, I'm willing to take this challenge, that the end result will be a permanent closure of Fuller for the community. I really believe it will be a magnet for all businesses in the area and really bring some of that Coconut Grove spirit back.
Great.
Sorry, that did take a long time, Marcel. I apologize.
That was a political 2 minutes, so you're good.
Sorry.
Any council member have any comments or questions for the commissioner? Council members are good. Oh, Rachel? You're muted, Rachel.
Hi, okay, so
There you go.
yeah, got it. I think I'm good. So you mentioned that, the idea of vacating the street gives back half and half to the adjacent property owners. And what is the temperature with those property owners? Are they sort of into it or not? And then I guess the question is, mentioning that Green Street, the $24,000 a year that they would get, if it remains non-vehicular but city-owned, what's the revenue that could potentially generate? So it's sort of like the pros and cons. If you give it to them to develop, then it's not out of the city's pocket to kind of improve, but there's potentially a loss of revenue over the long term that the city could certainly be using. So I just, maybe talk about it from that perspective.
Thank you, Rachel, and very good question. So both property owners are on board to do the closure in one way or another. And after all the discussions, I think they agree as well that the vacation method is not the best way to go. We would lose complete control programmatically. They would be carrying liability. And so it might not be activated in the way that we would hope. If we can keep it as a municipal asset, as a right of way, we can program it, permit it, and keep it, active and safe in the ways that we want. Most likely it would be the bid driving this. They would probably be coming with a lot of the funds that would help do this if they get behind it. There is mixed concerns at the bid currently based on whether or not the parking, the loss of parking is going to hurt surrounding businesses. And it's a viable concern because remember, this really is to help those restaurants and retail thrive and survive. The whole, even though there's a very good public space point about it, we don't want to hurt businesses. We're trying to help businesses. I believe this will help them, but there's a balanced conversation about parking access and whether people are even willing to come into the Grove if the perception is that they're not going to find a parking space. I think we'll get past that. And it's only, I believe it's 12 spaces, if I'm not mistaken. And I haven't missed it during the pandemic. And even now that we're in, so I'm dedicated to finding the parking solutions we need, but I wouldn't shy away from this. And your other question was about revenue. Yes, you want it to be, it's a balancing act. You don't want to try to charge so much that it actually starts raising prices for food and drink and everything. You want something reasonable that, allows the business to have more access to space than they would have, and that yields a return then for the city in the bid for use in activating it. And we could actually probably, legislate this in a way that funds generated there can be trapped for the activation. I mean, I haven't really thought through it to that extent yet, but there are ways to do it. But it would probably be commensurate with the square foot pricing for the sidewalk cafe permit. And it wouldn't be all an entire street for one restaurant. Like I said, you've probably got 12, 13 entities there on that street. Plus it's going to be meant to be an amenity for the entire commercial neighborhood, not just for the abutting restaurants.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else from the Village Council have any comments or questions? Then seeing, oh yes, go ahead, Hank.
I just want to thank the commissioner for pushing this. This is a great thing. I know there's huge support for it, and however the details are worked out, I'm sure it's going to be something that we're all going to be very happy about for a long time to come. Thank you.
Thanks, Hank.
Great. I'm going to open it up to any residents on the call here would have a question for Commissioner Russell. Rachel, I saw you put your hand up. One more, real quick, Rachel, go ahead.
Sure, one more question. So I know that you're going to potentially do a workshop, I guess would be to kind of program it and think through what's needed. There's just something that just popped to mind and I just want to get it out there. Maybe it's premature, but I know that we've always been trying to bridge the gap between the bid and sort of the parts of the Grove not in the bid that still has a commercial component, specifically West Grove, and the pop-ups that could potentially be brought into the street there to sort of knit that two communities a little stronger than it is now. And, certainly with COVID, a lot of people have done their own sort of businesses, pop-up businesses kind of became a thing during COVID for those who did lose their primary income. So I'm just wondering if there's a way to sort of take the silver lining of COVID a little further and kind of make it sort of a memorial almost to what we went through and let that sort of continue on as a really special part of the Grove.
That's very interesting. I feel a volunteer stepping forward, Rachel, to help coordinate this. That's amazing.
Sure.
No, those are great ideas. I will absolutely support that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Again, anybody on the call have a question or comment on this item for Commissioner Russell? Well, you've done such a great job, Ken, that you've quieted the crowd, so we're good.
Do you know how rare it is I can get a non-controversial item to back that everybody's in love with? Oh my God, this is like a dream come true.
Yeah.
Not completely quiet. I don't know if you can hear me. My name is Barry Fellman, a longtime Grove resident. And kudos, Commissioner Russell. Thank you very much for supporting this. And I just want to point out the similarities between this issue and the last and it's about consensus, which you wisely try to build. And I think by coming together, the restaurants, the community, everyone has an opportunity to get a fair shake and to get benefit from it. And likewise, I think the people are very concerned about the trees in the neighborhood and safety, and getting behind the idea of bicycles is helping our community in a wider way by encouraging people not to be in cars. That these issues that are important to all of us can be win-wins if we make the effort. And thank you, Commissioner, for helping us realize that in this instance.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. And to give Hank some credit, I can see his frustration, and I understand he's very passionate about the Commodore Trail project. The reason it took me 4.5 years to finish the bricking on Main Highway was exactly this issue. How do we accomplish our goals of safety and access without killing the trees or with minimum damage to the trees? And it took that much research and studying what other cities had done. And I was at one point, I almost gave up. I was told I could not do it without killing the trees, that we would have to remove all of those mahoganies. And I wouldn't say it out loud that I almost said yes, because we were getting lawsuit after lawsuit. People were tripping and falling and getting hurt. Wheelchairs couldn't roll through. But thank God we found the way. We found the right products, the right vendors, the right science to save the trees and do it right. I don't know that's always going to be the case. And you may or may not have the geometry here to make everybody happy. But it's this process you're going through right now is the process of trying to build consensus. And it doesn't mean everybody's going to get what they want or need out of the situation. But you're working with everyone and you're doing the hard work. So keep going, Hank. We're going to get there.
I'd like to make one last comment if I could. This idea of building consensus and trying is really the way we can make our city work better for all of us. And I want to ask you, Commissioner Russell, in the way of these neighborhood conservation districts, there have been a lot of neighborhoods in Coconut Grove which you've supported about trying to make our neighborhoods safer and respect the quality of the grove. That's why you ran. Man, you cleaned up Merry Christmas Park and you've been going ever since. What can we do? There's a very big issue about how the city is not really living up to its responsibilities in protecting the neighborhoods because they don't have good enforcement of the existing laws. And we see this in lawsuits. I live at Grove Isle. There's a big one there. We keep losing our ability to speak with staff to tell them, look, these laws are not being followed. What can we do? How can we come together with staff on these neighborhood issues at large? This is just such a desperate question. Lawsuits keep going on. You see people at every commission meeting about this. Can you start some type of task force, some type of ombudsman office, some crazy new idea to help us residents realize the benefits of our neighborhoods and still give the developers the ability to keep our city growing and have the revenue coming without impacting us so negatively?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for that. No, I will be brief. It's all about advocacy with civility. We missed that second part, and that gets us at each other's throats because we are very passionate about our issues. And you can't, have the argument of cycling versus trees, for example. You have to have the talk about cycling and trees and pedestrians and trees. And so I've always tried to build consensus. In fact, they laughed me on the dais when I tried to trademark the word consensus, and nobody was listening, but I'm trademarking it. I'm a big believer in that. And that's why I don't bring partisan issues to the dais yet. I'm able to pass very progressive legislation because I don't wear my party on my sleeve on that dais. And even though I'm in the minority, I've been able to pass every single bit of environmental, good government, police oversight legislation to keep us moving forward as a city in a positive way. And it's all about the way you carry yourself and try to respect others and their point of view, even when it gets crazy. But what you're talking about is different. You're talking about some enforcement issues. And that's where my office can be your ombudsman. If you are having an issue where someone is not enforcing appropriately or not following the code appropriately, or maybe someone's weaponizing the code, please come to my office. We'll help mediate in any way we can. In fact, I've been mediating the Grove Isle situation for this full 6 years. And I really believe over this next few months, I will have the final, I don't call it settlement, but mediation that will allow everybody to go back to their corners and say, listen, we got the best out of this for community quality of life, and the developer who has certain rights, that there's some certainty there going forward. That's been a big one. So I'm all about mediation and alternative dispute resolution. I'm not an attorney, but I'm just a peacekeeper with 3 kids, and I'll help you guys however I can.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. And I do want to point out.
Thank you.
Comment is that our new city manager, who was only new, right, when COVID came in just before, I met with him just as a general meeting, and he said, I'm here as a problem solver. And I really liked that idea. And I'm hoping that that can be something that you help us go forward with staff.
He is, and he's spread thin, so his intention is still there, but we can help. So just reach out to my office anytime. I know my team is listening. My chief of staff, Abigail, my Grove District Director, Daniel Hernandez. That's what makes this work. I've got an amazing team. So even if you can't get me directly, they will help you solve the problem. And if they can't get it solved, I'll elevate it to the next step.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. I also want to use this opportunity to kind of, the village council is here exactly for that, right? We are the liaison between the residents and government. And even though these problems are huge, we have been working intensely with the building and zoning department, because code enforcement is one of the biggest problems, I think we have here. We can see from our neighboring city of Coral Gables, they do it right. You put your trash can out the wrong day, you get fined. That's the way it should be, to keep everything civil. And we are working with the new city manager. The building and zoning department has done some great new initiatives with not only the electronics plan, but they have a whole section for residents to come in, open every day for residents assistance for problems. So come to the village council website, come to our meetings and share your concerns and problems, because that's what we're trying to do. We're all volunteers here, but we have the same concerns you all have. But use our resources, and for sure use Commissioner Russell's office. But that's what we're here for, and we need to be heard, and that's why the meetings like this work. We got to bring all those people together and have consensus, and have, I always say, everyone leave a little bit unhappy is when we succeed, right? Because then everyone it's a give and take, and I think that's what's going to work here.
And to Marcelo's credit, also, what we have found is that he comes to the different city or entities and agencies, and they listen because they know that he's grounded in fact, and that he has some valid concerns, and the way he addresses them through the village council has been fairly successful, I think. And they know that he's not going to waste their time. It's just, this is the facts, and he's done some great things. So thank you again, Marcelo. It's really, really great to see progress.
No, thanks. And I think this team between you and Hank, Rachel, Linda Williams, everyone on this village council has been so hungry to work. And I think I found that most of the problems we encounter was really alternative facts, right? Not people don't have the facts, and if they don't have the facts, then we start these arguments and you start all these these rumors and falsehoods, and you get off track. So that's why we have to be very careful, and that's what I had never seen the plan for that intersection until tonight, and I think we got some good discussion on it. And we're going to move forward with some more facts, and we can address everyone correctly in that manner. Our last item here was some of the Housing and Zoning Committee had the announcements of some recent waivers. With the NCD, we get a lot of waiver requests, and we do diligently go through every single waiver we receive and decide if it's something that we need to take up on to protect the village and the NCD. We may be aware we've had some success in the last few months in saving some trees, working with developers to work around the trees, and it's really great when we can have both sides work together to come to a middle ground that works for everyone. We are currently reviewing 3 or 4 waivers right now that have to do with demolition of older homes. And again, we've reached out to the owners of the properties and talking to other departments of the city. I don't know if there's any particular waiver that wants to be discussed by any council member right now. Anybody have any particular waiver they want to discuss? No? Okay, go ahead. Larissa?
This is more of a general comment. I attended a Grove Watch meeting with Rotary, and Marlene, you were there. There was a really striking statistic that Debbie Dolson shared with me, and it really it stopped me in my tracks. Basically, the number of waivers that has been issued in the city of Miami for 2021 is what, like 40, 50, of which
60%
60%
of all the waivers in Dade County are Coconut Grove.
right. And yet we only occupy 5.6 square miles of the city of Miami. So there's when you compare the two, they're diametrically opposed. So we're a very small little sliver of the city of Miami, yet we take up the lion's share of waivers. That trend is not sustainable. So
Right.
it's the time, when we see them, we've really got to act on them.
Well, let me make one comment on that. And I saw that stat and at first, there's a couple of reasons I think behind that. Number one, we are in an NCD. The NCD requires more waivers in non-NCD areas. And I think a waiver process, when things, here's the problem with development, right? Not every lot's the same, not every house the same. So there's a lot of gray areas. And unfortunately, when you write code, you're depending on a processor or an employee or somebody to interpret that code in a way that it's positive for the rights of the homeowner and the community. So in the Grove, since nothing's standard, nothing's standardized, we don't have streets and avenues on blocks and perfectly square lots and all that. Anytime you get in a gray area, I think you want to encourage the process to be a waiver process, because then the notice goes out, right? So you want notification, because if we didn't have notification,
we wouldn't.
Village Council wouldn't have much to do, right? Because we would only see things when shovels are going in the ground. So you're right. The Grove is such an amazing place, so it attracts a lot of investment, which attracts a lot of permits, which then attracts a lot of waivers. But what we don't want to do is get rid of waiver process, right? Because it's one more, unfortunately, bureaucratic, but also preservation way to make us aware of what's going on in the city. But you're right. We have to.
I'm not suggesting we get rid of the waiver process whatsoever. I'm suggesting that the fact that in this small little area, such a lion's share of them are being applied for. That's what's striking to me. But you're right. We're in an NCD and therefore require more waivers than not. But I'd like to take a look at the data and see if in fact they're just waivers for minor alterations or renovations or actual demos.
Yeah. So I was on, one of the things I tried to work on years ago was, even if you're doing, technically speaking, if you're a homeowner on your own house and you want to do a renovation, which it includes removing any part or a small part of exterior wall, that should trigger a demo waiver, which is cumbersome, but then if you don't do it across the board like that, then you're going to miss some that you wish you had done, right? So I think that we're in a very desirable place to live, hence with our property values, once all this pressure we have for development. But I think we should look at it again and see, what are these waivers being applied for? And hopefully none of them are falling through the cracks, right? Because if they fall through the cracks, then we have no rights. I mean, we've seen ultra modern homes being built on historical Charles Street, which is exactly against all the NCD code for that area, but it got passed, because
with waivers.
With waivers, it gets passed. So it is a double-edged sword, but I think they're the evil necessary tool. And let's definitely review that stat and see, how many of those are really significant, or how many of those are maybe, are insignificant and don't need to be, classified as something that we need to concern ourselves with.
I'll reach out to her and see if she can give me the data behind that.
Sounds great. Well, we've reached all our agenda items. If anybody,
Marcelo, it's Joyce. Could I ask you one question?
Yes.
Thank you so much for all of your board members and what you do. It's been wonderful, and the meeting has been wonderful. I received a waiver notification for Charles Avenue, and that scares me, of course, from whatever's been going on there. Have you looked at that? 3277 Charles Avenue?
3277. It doesn't ring a bell. I did remember seeing something on Charles. I believe it was a partial demo of a wall for renovation.
This says to allow major alterations and addition to the property.
To keep it,
So-
to keep a conforming, a non-conforming existing use. Is that what, is that one?
It says, yes, it does.
Yes, yes, I did review that one, yes, so.
Thank you.
Yes, it was since a lot of these homes, either the older homes, don't comply to code. So once you want to, try to do something, you don't want to lose that conformity. So it is a renovation of a house in there that's just trying to keep the setback wrong, and I think it's okay. It's not a tear down.
Thank you for looking at that. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Yes, Rachel.
Real quick, yeah, Mom, okay. Just to point out, I want to remind everybody that the day after tomorrow at the commission meeting, there will be a decision or conversation around the intent of the NCD, which is something Andy Parrish has sort of been pushing through the different layers for a few months now. And I think, there is precedent in the city of North Miami Beach that they actually were able to have some success in controlling a little bit of what was happening with, new projects and renovations and so on. So I think for the first time, there's a little bit of an open door to let some of this conversation happen. Intent is sort of easy, low-hanging fruit to amend in the NCD. And I know we've talked about doing it in bite-sized pieces as opposed to sort of the overhaul that we tried a few years ago. So I just want to encourage everybody to get out there. And right now, the intent is sort of recommended the way it's drafted in the code. But Andy's recommendation is to make it literally a box that needs to be checked, meaning does this project, support what we have here as a space, a community, an environment, and so on. So I think it's really important if people can to voice their opinion. Ken Russell's here tonight. I don't want to open that door necessarily because that's meant to go in front of him in a couple of days. But I do encourage everybody to try to get there and whether it's by email or in person, just get out there and support what's going on with strengthening the intent so that the reviewers have to make that a stop in their consideration for a project.
Yes, thank you. That is a very, very difficult item. I've spoken to the new director of planning department. It's when you take an intent language and apply it to code and how it gets done. I think it needs to be reviewed. But that gray area is very difficult on it, on how we can, do we make it straight into law and go all the way one way with it and it's shut and dry, or do you keep it open? So it's a tough. I was very happy to see that the discussion among the department directors were, okay, we get it. How do we do this? And that's a very difficult question on how we get this stuff done and how we make it where it's applicable in law. So I'm very curious I'm going to be listening to that and see how they can take that, because the intent language, it's been challenged in the courts, with Charlie Cinnamon's place, went all the way to the court. They said it doesn't work anywhere. So we don't want to just have something that creates a problem and creates more litigation and more delays. We want to have something that preserves the grove. So that's a very difficult thing to tackle. But yes, Ken.
So my advice for Thursday on that item is a lot of it hinges on the planning director, because the way the commissioners receive their agenda, these are 2,000-page agendas, right? Something could go through very easily and quietly unless it's controversial. But if your planning director has concerns about it, he's going to bring those concerns up in his briefing as he visits each commissioner this week. I always get my briefing last, even though he can't tell me what commissioner is feeling what way. I can see his concerns, and I'll get a good sense on Wednesday night where the planning director is on it. So if he has concerns, which you'll most likely see as a request for a deferral, I don't think anybody will try to kill it if it's something that receives advocacy and has potential, if it's just about how do we work it out. So don't look at it as a deferral, as a loss. And what I was telling Andy is you don't need to change anyone's mind. You just need 3 votes. So this isn't a crusade or a hill we're trying to die on. We're trying to find the politics to make this palatable to 3 commissioners that would vote yes on having intent language have some more teeth. And that's not an impossible ask. But the question is, does the development side look at this as incredibly limiting and does it take away their as of right capabilities, and do they start lobbying on this issue? That's how we lost the NCD2 in the last time, and the NCD amendments in the last time. So the quieter it goes through with less controversy and passion, probably the better. This is really just trying to clarify the code and, you know, make our intent clear. And if that's our intent, should the spirit and the letter line up? And so let's see how it goes. I'm happy to report back on Wednesday night if you want to check with me, Marcelo, after I've or Andy, either one, gotten my briefing from the planning director.
Great. Well, very good. We've passed our 8 o'clock mark. Does any person on the call want to make any final comment? I'll open the floor to the public.
I'd just
Anybody?
like to ask Ken a question, if I could. This is Marlene. Ken, do you think we should not have massive advocacy on the issue on Thursday?
You know, it's hard to say, and like these commissioners are fickle. And if they feel that the Grove has risen up and has some sort of entitlement, they may actually be against it just out of spite. You never know. You never know. But if what you're asking for makes sense and you have very good arguments, I would never ask you to not advocate, because you don't want to actually get voted down or withdrawn. I would hate for us not to have made our case. But my recommendation is to remember, we're trying to find the votes in this room, right? And it's not about accusations or demonizing of development. It's really about clarification of the code so everyone knows what they're getting into. And so no, I wouldn't say, you know, get t-shirts printed and light the torches, but I would if you've got a good piece to add to it, I would definitely. But I don't think numbers are going to make the difference here. I think a good argument and storytelling on why you're doing this is what's going to make the difference.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Great. Thank you. Any final words for anyone? I want to thank everyone for coming to our meeting and continuing to support us and advocacy, and we're here for you. And I can call this meeting to an end. Thank you very much, and good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Another time.
Okay.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.